Hey everybody, welcome to the Limit Breakdown with your host Sid.
And Migs.
And we're going to be giving you our reviews, thoughts, and opinions on everything movies, TV shows, and entertainment. Today, we're going to be covering everything in the MCU that's going to be leading up to Dr. Strange Multiverse of Madness. So stick around.
Right on. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, and today we are doing our lead up to Madness. We're going to be discussing the TV shows and movies that are leading into the MCU's Doctor Strange 2. So, let's get started.
We're going to be talking about, first off, on WandaVision that aired January 15th, 2021. Now, I don't know about you, when I first heard that Marvel was going to do a bunch of TV shows, I was a little skeptical. I didn't know how this was going to span out. Starting with WandaVision, and as the show went on and I watched it, even though I was very hesitant on it, I genuinely enjoyed overall what the show brought. Not only the story, but like how the cinematic of this show was.
The great thing about the MCU on Disney Plus is it has been exactly what I wanted it to be, which is an MCU production over several hours. So we're getting a 10-hour MCU movie for, split overall. And so I think that was great, especially with a character like Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
Wanda Maximoff in the comics is very overpowered. Very, very, very overpowered.
She's an Omega 11 mutant for anyone who does not know. That just means that she is a handful of people that they can basically alter the world in a very bad way.
So she's one of those characters that can easily fall into the misunderstood category. So with them taking her story, and particularly the story of her and Vision, and putting it in this long story format, it just really allowed her to better develop that character. They did in, what was it, 9 episodes, 8 episodes?
Something like that.
Yeah. They did in those 8 episodes what they couldn't do in 3 movies with Wanda and Vision. Like, before, I personally didn't really care too much for either Wanda or Vision before the show, and then afterwards they're a key part of the story for me.
I agree. So diving into the show, like I mentioned, the cinematic of the show was amazing. Each episode had a different era. It was like watching old school TV, blips of 2021 in there. They started adding the story of that she created a pocket dimension, and then other people are trying to get in, but people in the pocket dimension are just in her mind, basically.
I really enjoyed how they allowed everybody to figure out what was going on at the same time. So it wasn't like they were sitting there telling you, oh, this is what's going on the outside, but you saw it at the same time that the agents were figuring it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really cool effect seeing the transitions between the decades, between the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and throughout the different sitcoms. A couple really cool references in those intros too. I don't know if you noticed Malcolm in the Middle for like the 90s, and
yeah, I did notice that. Yeah, there's some small Easter eggs here and there that they added, which I thought were very clever to the television genre back in the day. Elizabeth Olsen is a phenomenal actress. She did a really good job. So did Paul Bettany. Is that name? Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
The one thing that I found that I was not expecting was in the later episodes when her brother showed up, and it happened to be the X-Men Quicksilver, not the one that died.
In
Avengers 2.
That was such a missed opportunity, but yeah, they threw it away for a boner joke.
I thought it was great. I thought it was really clever. But what's funny to me is, after I saw that, I realized that she saw the X-Men version of Quicksilver and Quicksilver, in her world, her brother is dead.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to the year, I think 2023 or maybe 24, they're coming out with Kraven the Hunter. And it's the same actor.
Yeah.
And if he's going to be in the MCU, she's going to see her brother as Kraven.
Well, I don't think that's going to be in the MCU. I think that Kraven movie is going to be part of the Sony stuff.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be like Morbius and... hopefully not like
shoehorned Morbius in the MCU with Vulture, but...
Sorry about that week. Shoehorn was the word of the week that week. But anyway.
Check out our video in the link below. But yeah, so overall, I think it was a great show. They expanded on the MCU and her character, and showing her abilities of what she can and can't do. Basically creating a pocket universe within Earth, and doing whatever she wants and controlling people.
And the thing about it that I thought was most noteworthy was the fact that it was literally a trauma response coping mechanism. She was brought to this plot of land that Vision bought for them, and she was so overwhelmed with emotion that all of this power that she had been basically holding in, restraining, just exploded out of her, and her raw emotions just took over this entire land. And she wasn't fully aware of what was going on at first. And then as she started to figure out, as she started to realize how much control she had, which brings us to the surrounding characters. Like, I thought it was really interesting to make, I guess, what is it, Sword? Yeah, it's Sword. It's not Shield.
It's not anymore. Shield, it's Sword.
Yeah.
Because Shield is now disbanded, so Sword has taken over.
Yeah. So to make Sword the antagonist was really interesting, and the little twist that they had where they're basically leading you to believe that Wanda is the villain. Which, I mean, arguments can be made either way, but then
she had good intentions. Her actions were bad.
But when they show you that really she was manipulated by the Sword agent, and at first we were led to believe that she had taken Vision's body, when actually it was she basically just created him.
He was never actually there.
Yeah.
I think that was very clever. And then speaking of antagonists, the main antagonist at the very end, at the very twist, the other witch,
Agatha Harkness.
Yeah, Agatha Harkness. The way they introduced her, by the way, I love that actress. Yes. I forget her name. She's a phenomenal. I love her.
Not to mention the song in there was kind of a bop. It actually I think hit like the Billboard Top 100 when the show was airing. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. But yeah, I think the way they introduced her, the way they put her in there, and like every episode she just appears. She's like one of those "Go home, Roger."
Yeah.
Was super clever, and then at the very, very end, they reveal that she's actually Agatha. She's she's basically a conjurer, and she needs to, she's trying to basically control Wanda and make her apprentice, kind of, and be like, look, you need to calm down.
Yeah.
And finally, when Wanda breaks free and kind of fights her with magical battle.
Well, from what I understood, Agatha's character is she, had been basically hiding amongst us for a long time, because her power set was basically, like she said, she takes power from the undeserving. So like she basically killed all of her coven.
Yeah.
And so she was, I guess, somewhere in the vicinity of Westview, saw everything that was going on, and managed to work her way in to see what all of it was going on, and
so she can
steal Wanda's power. The thing that I thought was interesting was how they positioned her. How her arrogance was her downfall, because she looked at Wanda as someone that was undeserving, as somebody that didn't know what she was doing, had never been trained in any magic, didn't have the slightest idea of what she was doing, and then the first lesson she taught Wanda was the one that ended up dooming her, which were the runes. The runes that
ruined her.
The ruins ruined.
Yes. So I thought that was very clever how they kind of pitched her in there.
And I also loved that Vision versus Vision ended up being a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of they were fighting each other at first.
They're just having a conversation like normal. I'd forgotten about the fight, the Vision versus Vision fight. It was I was not expecting it to go down. I thought it was going to be a huge explosion and everything, but they're having a logical conversation while trying to fight. It was extremely clever. The one thing that did break my heart at the end of the show is when she finally dissolves that pocket universe to what it was. She has to say goodbye to her kids that she created in her head, but still.
Well, and I think it really showed what makes Wanda a hero at the end of the day, because she could have very selfishly just said, you know what?
No.
Once she figured out, hey, my family's attached to this dimension, so just screw everybody here. I'm gonna protect my family but no, she realized that what she was doing was wrong, and she made her own self-determination that there had to be another way.
Yeah, but it was still, that scene itself was very, very heartbreaking, and I was like, I feel her, I understand what you feel.
So speaking of the lead up into Maddness with this, I think there were a couple of points from this particular series that are key going into Multiverse of Maddness. One, Wanda being the Scarlet Witch.
Correct.
Is a major key point. I'm not sure how they're going to play it out in the MCU, but in the comics, there's only ever one Nexus being. She is one of the most powerful beings, and so there's only one variant of her that's as powerful as she is. Jumping a little bit ahead, I don't know if you saw the videos where they had synced Loki and What If.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
And at the same time, if you play the last episode of Loki and the last episode of WandaVision, and you start them at the same time, around the same time that Wanda starts getting her full Scarlet Witch powers, you see He Who Remains take notice.
And now.
Yeah.
That scene right there, yep. So I think mainly that's going to lead up to Doctor Strange, is, as you said, is her power, as well as the fact that she's able to create a pocket dimension, right? Since it's multiverse of madness. So I think that pocket dimension, the fact that she can go in and out of these dimensions or these universes on her own. Any final thoughts before we roll into Loki?
No, like I said, the biggest takeaway for me for WandaVision was just taking the time to establish that relationship. I think it was very important for us to see just how much Vision meant to Wanda, because we didn't really see that in the previous Avengers movies. Yeah, we saw that they had a relationship, and then in Endgame and Infinity War, we knew they were a couple, but it all seemed rushed. We hadn't really seen them develop anything. This actually allowed us to spend the time necessary with the characters to really understand what they mean to each other. It's going to be interesting going forward to see now with the White Vision that's been reawakened, and with her going on this journey, searching the multiverse to probably find her children.
Yeah. Next, Loki, that aired on June 9th, 2021. This was, I'm not gonna lie, to me, the most anticipated TV series for me. I'm a huge fan of not only Loki as a character, but Tom Hiddleston as an actor.
I was concerned with the point at which they were pulling him, that all of the good things that had redeemed his character were basically wiped away.
Yeah.
And you were going to be left with that horrible,
same character, no character development.
Yeah.
Same person. Yeah, I understand. I think they did poke at the fact that is his character. Obviously, he changes throughout the series. But his character development in the show is really well. He's like, I still want to go back to being me. Right? He's like, I understand rights and wrongs now, but I still want to go back to being me. And I really enjoyed that fact.
I thought it was pretty interesting when they they were talking about like the points at which the Time Variance Authority pulled Loki, and it seemed like a common thread was anytime he deviated from his typical normal, that's when he would get ripped.
Yeah.
Or that's when the TVA would not allow. And also, I thought it was really interesting about how the Nexus event that they created at the one planet, when it looked like they were about to kiss, him and Sylvie. And it's like, only Loki would fall in love with himself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very clever. So the variant turned out to be a female Loki called Sylvie, and she wants to basically take down the TVA for not being what they are. So TVA basically takes you from you're about to do something bad, and they pull you. They're like, well, you're going to do something that's going to mess the timeline. So
the dogma of the TVA was basically that there was this thing called the sacred timeline, right? And the timekeepers are the ones guarding over the sacred timeline over what events are supposed to happen. And so there are certain things that are allowed to happen, and there are certain things that can't happen. And so if a character deviates from what their selected path is, then they become a variant. So then the TVA comes in and basically clips that branch off the tree. And before it has a chance to branch off.
So what that actually reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it was a Tom Cruise movie way back in the day called Minority Report.
Yes.
And same concept where they're like, something bad is going to happen. We know it's because they have the ability with these special
precogs.
Yeah. And they go and take the people that are about to commit a murder or something
before it happens.
They're like, well, how do you know it's going to commit it?
Yeah.
So it becomes one of those things in Loki where the TVA is doing good, but they're pulling people before they can even have the choice to do something that's going to mess up the timeline, which I thought was a great concept. One of the funniest things, besides Owen Wilson, was the fact that the Infinity Stones mean absolutely nothing. He had the Infinity Stones. They're like, yeah, we use them as paperweights. And I'm like, what?
Well, I kind of had a little bit of trouble with that. I don't know if it was a continuity error or maybe because, the whole what if storyline with Ultron depended on him collecting the Infinity Stones and going across different realities. But I don't know if it was the fact that he had all the Infinity Stones from one reality and that gave him enough power to be able to transcend reality.
Yeah. Well, he was also a higher being through the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
And then if you remember in What If, there was a time where they were trying to destroy the stones and they weren't. Because they're like, well, these stones are built for this universe.
Yeah.
And
so I think that probably played something into it, but yeah, it was definitely a good way of changing the status quo right off the rip and letting you know, hey, what you thought you knew isn't gonna matter because at that point Loki was looking for the Tesseract because that's how he had gotten there. So having the easy access to be able to get that, but then open the drawer and it's like all these different Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
And he's just like, so this is the greatest power in the universe.
Yeah. But overall, I think it was great. I think lead up to Loki's finale where they meet
He Who Remains.
A.K.A.
Kang the Conqueror.
Yes, which they haven't officially said is Kang the Conqueror. But he called himself the He Who Remains. He had he said Conqueror, I think.
Yeah,
he's like, I have many names.
Yeah, this,
Conqueror, and so. And basically, Kang the Conqueror looks over the timeline. He knows what's about to happen, what is happening, and what's going to happen. Except for that moment that we mentioned earlier, where he's like, "Except now," and that's when it's supposed to sync with WandaVision. To basically, at that point, we have no idea what's going to happen. And if you look to the sky, at the end, you can see the branches going off. Basically concluding to a multiverse again. So I think Loki is going to make a comeback in Multiverse of Madness, but it's going to be not the Loki that died, obviously. It's going to be the Loki that ran away from a different timeline.
It's going to be interesting for me to see what the consequences of the Loki TV show are in the further MCU, and particularly the choice that they were forced to make towards the end of it. Because when they met He Who Remains, right, he basically told them, he's like, look, you guys have made it to this far. He's like, I'm tired of doing this. I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't want to do it anymore. I can leave you guys in charge. You guys can preserve this, but if you don't preserve this, then you're going to have to deal with an infinite number of variants of me that might not be as nice as I am. And might want to mess things up. And, you know, he had already, at that point, He Who Remains was the last remaining variant of himself from a huge interdimensional war. And so he had basically controlled it down into one timeline, and the way he was able to keep control was by trimming the variants, and so by preserving that sacred timeline, he kept the current flow. So they were forced to make the choice, you know, were they going to maintain the status quo, or were they going to give everybody the opportunity to have real freedom
and do whatever they want.
And do you know, whatever they want. And so Sylvie ultimately made the choice. And I thought it was really interesting, especially for their characters too, when Sylvie and Loki were at each other, and immediately she thought, oh, Loki's just trying to rule over something again. He's just trying to, you know, get another crown. And she's just like, you know, Loki just looks at her and goes, this was never going to work. Like, you don't trust anybody, and I can't be trusted.
Yeah, very clever.
And so it was a very interesting crossroads for them, and you kind of felt for Loki, because you felt like they had both made this progression. They were both becoming heroes, for lack of a better word. And then in this one moment, Sylvie's need for revenge and need to basically make somebody pay, because at the end of it was all about her suffering.
Yeah.
She wanted to know what her crime was that she committed that was so grave that caused the TVA to pull her from her childhood and basically wreck her life. And she never got an answer.
Yeah.
It was actually really, really messed up, because because the Judge Reinhold just kind of laughed when she asked her, and was like, I don't even remember.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of weird. One thing that I was not as satisfied with was, in all of MCU, Thor 1, 2, Avengers, what have you, Loki, though he is God of Mischief and kind of like a jester, he's still a very strong character. I mean, physically.
Yeah.
He knows how to fight. He knows, you know, he has his tricks, and he's really good at magic. But it seemed like in the TV show, he was nerfed. Every time he was in a fight or something, he just didn't. They kept downplaying him.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that bothered me, because he is, yes, he might not be the best, but he can still hold his ground. You know, and he is God technically, so he's supposed to have that super strength and thing naturally. And I think that's one thing that I did not like as much.
I mean, yeah, I think they probably could have made him a little bit more capable, but at the same time, if you look at his previous appearances, like, this is the first time that it was really Loki on his own. You know, in the first Avengers movie, he had an army.
Loki on his own.
I see what you did there.
But yeah, I suppose. But that's just one quarrel I had.
But as it pertains to Multiverse of Maddness, it's going to be interesting to see if there are any versions of Kang the Conqueror that they come across, if any versions of Loki that they come across, and how that's going to impact.
I think Alligator Loki's going to make a comeback. At least the classic outfit Loki with the big horns.
That was really cool.
Yeah. So final thoughts before we move on.
It was a great series. I thought it was very creative, the way that they took the concept of the TVA, and, you know, they became the de facto antagonists by the end of the show, you know. And I mean, obviously, with a show about Loki, you knew that you were going to ultimately end up rooting for Loki. But
I was rooting for Loki from scene 1.
And all the different versions of Loki, I thought were great. Like boastful Loki, I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Kid Loki, the classic Loki, so alligator Loki, of course.
Fair. So moving on to What If series on Disney Plus that aired on August 11th. I watched 3 episodes of this and then I stopped.
What?
Because, hold on.
Okay.
As of this moment, I have finished the series.
Okay.
But when I first watched it, it wasn't exciting. I was very excited for it. I'm like, oh, what if, whatever. And then they're like, well, what if Peggy Carter became Captain America? Okay, cool. They actually did that one very, very well. And then they're like, what if T'Challa became Star-Lord? And then what if this person? And then what if this person did this? And I'm like, it's just like, what if Tony Stark was female? What if like this? And I'm like, those what ifs they're not good. They're not clever. The only one that I thought was different and clever was the zombie one and the what if with Dr. Strange. Because those were completely different. The other what ifs I thought were just until somebody had kind of spoiled it for me and they said, well, you have to watch the whole thing and then watch the finale. Yeah. Because the finale connects all of them. So then I went back and I watched all of them and then I watched the finale and then everything clicked. Yeah. And after watching the finale, I think certain episodes are not that great. Yeah. However, as a series, I genuinely think it was actually a really good series.
So let's start chronologically with the Captain Carter. I thought that was particularly great. It was literally Captain America 1 with Peggy Carter. Like it was
straight up.
So, straight up. 100%. So and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that. They could have very easily replaced Steve Rogers and just kind of put him in the background. Yeah. But they gave him a role and they made him the proto Iron Man. The Hydra Stomper was dope.
That was amazing. By the way, I loved the animation. Yeah. I thought the artwork of What If was phenomenal. I like that art style, so I thought that was very clever.
Leading into what was the next one that I thought was interesting, the What If with Hank Pym, where he was hunting down the Avengers.
Wow.
That was a pretty.
Expecting that one.
That was pretty cool. And then the Ultron one where he had basically won and started taking the Infinity Stones.
So that one. So Ultron is actually one of my favorite villains, even though Avengers 2 is not a very well liked movie. I think Ultron is actually an amazing antagonist. James Spader, the actor, did a great job.
Yeah, he did.
And I think Ultron actually had the same ideas, more or less, that Thanos had. Just on a smaller scale. But it was the same idea. But it was just because the movie tanked so bad, nobody thinks about it.
Well, look, tanked in Marvel terms is different because that movie still.
I'm not talking about the grossing money. I'm talking about entertainment value just as a movie perspective.
I think it's going to be one of those movies that when we look back on it, it's probably going to get more appreciation the older that it gets. Yeah. I look back at that movie, like you said, the performance by the actor was particularly well done. I love the meme that came out of it. Ultron is the best villain because he spent 2 minutes on the internet and realized we all had to go.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why the What If series, the Ultron 1, I was like, I want to see how it plays out. Yeah. Granted, he became very delusional and crazy because of his programming. Yeah. But the way they did his episode leading to the finale was very clever to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, the only real episode that I thought was kind of superfluous, if we will, is the Party Thor one. Party Thor
that one made no sense to me.
Yeah, I think it was just funny. Yeah. And the whole, I'm going to call your mom.
Mom. Yeah. It was funny, it was entertaining, but it wasn't really that great. there was no reason for the Watcher to pull that Thor into his final
If
battle.
anything, I honestly kind of feel like it was a better universe for Thor and Loki, because although Thor was kind of a dim-witted airhead, he was still a good guy. He still had good intentions. And
he was just a Chad.
He was
just a Chad.
Yeah.
Party Chad.
But like what Loki, he's ruling he's ruler of the Frost Giants.
Yeah.
He looked great as a Frost Giant, by the way.
So I thought that one was I actually did not even like as much where T'Challa became Star-Lord. There were parts of it that I thought were really clever. He's friends with everybody. Thanos is his friend. They go to the Collector. And
he changed Thanos' mind with the conversation.
Yeah, I thought that was very clever. But as far as like the story, I was like, it's entertaining, but it's not really that great. It doesn't pertain to the story, at least for me.
I love Cha-Cha. I'm sorry. It was really I feel like it was part giving love to T'Challa and to the actor that played him, Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah,
rest in peace. He did such a great job, but I think it was a love letter to Chadwick Boseman.
Fair enough.
But it was also kind of a real big FU to Star-Lord, to the original, because it was just like everything Chris Pratt wanted to be was what T'Challa Star-Lord was.
Yeah.
It's like he's like, oh, I'm you might know me by another name, Star-Lord. And so
okay.
Yeah, and so like everybody wanted to be him. He convinced the Ravagers to be like the Robin Hoods of space. Like everything was just, the man had the golden touch, and so it was. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool how they kind of amped up the powers of the Collector. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember in the fight that he was having with T'Challa, where he brings out the artifacts and he's got Mjolnir in there. He's got Captain America's shield, Hela's helmet. Mm-hmm. Like, they made him pretty OP.
Powerful. That was the one that I understand it, but it was okay. The one that I generally loved was Dr.Strange, when he wants to consume all the power.
Oh, yeah.
That episode to me was very clever, very out of the box. Mm. So you see a different version of Dr. Strange called Supreme, Supreme, something like that. And basically, he consumes all these magical creatures to gain his knowledge and gain his strength, so he can turn back the time or the time spot where his loved one doesn't die.
in that particular universe, instead of him losing his hands, his fiance died, so he lost his heart.
Yeah.
So he is trying to figure out a way to stop her from dying, but in the process, the Ancient One tells him that her death is a fixed point in time, and that altering that would break reality.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I can't accept that. There's got to be a way for me to get enough power to be able to change a fixed point in time, and that's what leads into him, absorbing all of these creatures to try to gain more and more and more power. And he ultimately ends up doing just that. He is able to save her and keep her from dying, but thus breaks his own reality.
Yeah, and there's no more. So it's not that his even loved one doesn't live. I thought that was a very clever episode. Actually, genuinely very dark. I do love that episode, specifically because it shows you how a multiverse or how a universe can break and collapse on itself.
I really thought that it was, even though it was like pitched as evil Doctor Strange, he wasn't really evil.
He was just greedy and power hungry.
Well, he was grieving. He never got over his grief, and he never got over the desire to. It was selfish. Yeah. It was selfish, yes, but I don't think he was ever evil.
Yeah, I see what you mean, like a malice. Per se. That makes sense.
And that was the reason why at the conclusion of everything he basically appointed himself as the the Watcher over the two little toys in the snow globe.
Yeah, so leading up to all of everything in What If, the final episode is the Watcher, who basically just watches, doesn't do anything, he's like watching TV. And due to Ultron gaining the 6 Infinity Stones, going into other realities and basically killing everybody because that's his programming.
Yeah, as I understood it, Ultron. Oh yeah, when he just one-shots Thanos.
Oh, Thanos comes out. He's like, yes, and he's like, interesting.
Zoom. Right.
I'm like, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
Vision didn't do that.
Yeah.
But so I find that one was weird because at that time he did not have any of the Infinity Stones except the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Thanos came out with 5 because he didn't have the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
So you're telling me Vision could have done that?
Yes.
I don't think so. Yes, I think that would have been a crazy fight. Maybe he would have even won. But just splitting them in half just with the Mind Stone,
it's also you have to think of the dynamic between the character that Vision is and the character that Ultron is.
True, you're right. It was an Ultron Vision.
At that point, that version of Ultron had assembled all of the power, and he had no qualms with killing anyone.
Yeah.
And so, whereas Vision, he wouldn't have.
Still holds back.
Yeah.
I understand.
I mean, even Thor, go for the head type deal.
Yeah, I understand, but it's
for the head.
I just found that a little odd, but yeah. So basically, once Ultron goes in the other realities, the Watcher breaks his oath and assembles a team who are the rest of the What If main characters, and he's like, we have to bring down Ultron, and eventually through a power struggle to do it.
We haven't talked about Killmonger.
I was just leading up to that. So the finale of What If was Ultron basically getting his power, fighting over the stones, and Killmonger taking over the nanotech, and basically being in a deadlock with Ultron for infinity that Dr. Strange contains, the evil Dr. Strange per se. Killmonger, going back, had his own episode, right?
Yeah. He had a what if
Iron Man.
What if Iron Man was saved by Killmonger?
Yep.
So Iron Man never became Iron Man because Killmonger saved him from being kidnapped by the Ten Rings.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
So in that one, Killmonger basically becomes his best friend. They do a lot of good stuff together. They build machines or what have you. And at the end of the day, Killmonger betrays Tony Stark, kills him, and then takes his tech.
Yeah.
And that leads him to be kind of like an anti-hero type.
Yeah.
Deal.
Yeah, he was able to still infiltrate Wakanda, still take the throne, and all of that.
And hence why in the finale he was not to be trusted.
Yeah.
What I found interesting was I was looking back through it and I was like, I think in every single What If, Tony Stark, Iron Man dies.
The only one was, there was a character that was in the finale that was part of the Guardians of the Multiverse that didn't get their own episode, and I think they had planned on doing an episode with Gamora killing Thanos, because there was a scrapyard version of Tony Stark, and it looked like it was the Gamora that was wearing the Thanos armor, and her version of Tony Stark had it looked like the Hulkbuster, but it looked like it was made out of scraps. Yeah. And when the Watcher came and told her, "You've been chosen,"
and he's like, "Well, I don't want to go." And he's like, "Not you, Tony."
Not you, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that funny. Yeah. That was hilarious. But I mean, in every other episode, Tony Stark dies in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I find that kind of funny since in the real MCU, Tony Stark is dead.
Yeah.
Spoiler if you haven't seen Endgame.
But to wrap up, I think this gave us a good first taste of how crazy the different multiverses could be, just how variant. Some of them are just subtle differences, and some of them are going to be massive. And
like Party Thor versus Captain Carter.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be great. It was a great way to lead into the next version of the MCU, which is taking things on in a more interdimensional venue. But
And
overall I enjoyed it, and it's already been renewed for season 2, so I'm excited to see what they're gonna do. Well, I mean, as a premise, they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah. All right. So let's roll into Spider-Man 3, which is the most recent thing that came out in December, which directly has Doctor Strange in it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it opens up the world to the multiverse. But basically Spider-Man 3 has Doctor Strange in it, who opens up the multiverse. So at this point, obviously, people who haven't seen Spider-Man 2, Far From Home, at the end of Spider-Man 2, Mysterio reveals to the world who Spider-Man's real identity is. Peter Parker reveals his face.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second.
We're going to be
This is a giant gripe of mine about Spider-Man Far From Home. And it was the fact that not one time did Spidey call Mysterio fishbowl head. And that was his like primary insult for Mysterio. It's right there. And not one time did we get a fishbowl head. Sorry.
Well, the whole time he didn't know he was a bad guy. Plus, he never had his bowl until the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Spider-Man 2, end of the movie, he reveals to everybody who Spider-Man's real identity is, and that's how Spider-Man 3 starts off, is immediately after. So Peter Parker asks Dr. Strange that can you make a curse or a spell where basically nobody remembers him. Now, due to him messing up the spell, he's like, oh, well, I want MJ to remember. Oh, well, I want my aunt to remember. Oh, well, I want my friends to remember. Causes a rift, and basically Doctor Strange messes up the spell and brings in other universes Spider-Man and their villains, including Sam Raimi's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, as well as Andrew Garfield's The Amazing Spider-Man, and their villains into the MCU.
As a huge Spider-Man fan, I thought it was everything that we could have hoped for. I was hoping for more than just casual cameos, and they delivered. I thought that the best possible course that they could have taken with those characters, with the villains, the fact that they let William Dafoe it up, and
I love that actor.
It was so great. The best parts of him being Green Goblin and just having all of that.
Being William Dafoe.
Yeah.
He was more William Dafoe than he was the Green Goblin, and I think he knocked it out of the park as usual.
As far as the relevancy, I think it's interesting to point out that while yes, Peter Parker, kind of was a little bit to blame for the spell going awry, like he in one second he goes from, oh yeah, you're asking me to erase everyone's mind just because your life got a little bit messy, to yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's run this thing.
Yeah.
And I think he, in a little bit of a way, he kind of, like, it didn't take a whole lot of convincing. So it's kind of like maybe he wanted to do it. Maybe he wanted to see if he could do a spell like that. And apparently they'd done it before. Apparently they had some kegger or something, some sort of party. He was like, oh yeah, you don't remember the full moon at Carmitage?
Yeah. Yeah, it was hilarious. So there's a fan theory out there that Doctor Strange wasn't the real Doctor Strange. It was somebody else. I don't know if that's gonna play off as well, but I can see that coming. But I think that is where the main bulk of Multiverse Madness is gonna come from, is because of that spell, especially at the end. Even though they fixed the spell. In multiple movies, you can see the rift opening, other villains and heroes stepping through, especially end of Morbius, where the Vulture arrives randomly. So I think that's going to be the bulk of what is going to be Multiverse of Madness.
I think that the whole consensus behind Doctor Strange's involvement is, well, going back to kind of a little bit of the roots of Doctor Strange, is what made him... He was an arrogant douche before he became the Sorcerer
Yep.
Supreme, when he was one of the top medical minds and he was good at what he did. And I think he's regained his confidence as being the Sorcerer Supreme, and in a way regained a little bit of his douchebaggery. And so, you know, at the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, Mordo was like, you know, there are consequences. Like, even though he did the right thing by using the Time Stone to defeat Dormammu, you know, Mordo was like, hey, there are consequences to using black magic. There are, you know, the bill always comes due. So I think in this movie it showed just a little bit of his, well, not a little bit, a lot of his arrogance. In casting the spell for the reason that he cast it, having it go terribly wrong, and then it kind of reminded me a little bit of Zordon and Power Rangers, how like he did not take any time to explain any of the intricacies whatsoever.
He didn't think I was gonna do it.
Yeah, like, you know, all it would have taken was one simple conversation. Oh, hey, yeah, so we're gonna erase everybody's memory. They're not gonna know anything about you, that you even exist. Is there anyone you might want to exclude?
Yeah, he just started the
he's just like,
started
oh, yeah,
the spell.
Let's do this.
And then, yeah, I found that weird. And including when he was changing the spell, I was like, you just started the spell. It's not like, it's not, as soon as you start, you can't go back. You know, I found that kind of weird. But
yeah,
I don't know magic, so if you magic users can explain that part to me. But...
And apparently you can be naturally gifted in magic. Like, you can be good at math, you can be good at magic. So all of a sudden...
Well, he had the ring.
Yeah.
So Ned had the ring that was able for him to do it. He might have been naturally gifted at magic, but due to the ring, it manifested easier, and he's able to do it.
Well, they also said there's something about his bloodline, and his family, or something.
So it's I think it's a mixture of two things. Overall, this movie I think was phenomenal, and it's going to be the bulk, I think, of Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that it's going to be the bill coming due for Doctor Strange. I think it's going to be the true consequences of him having cast that spell, having, you know, carelessly interfered with other dimensions, like, you know, the one scene with Venom where the tiny drop of the Venom symbiote got left in the MCU. You know, you mentioned Vulture crossing over to the Sony universe. Like, there are so many different possibilities. There could very well have been so many different characters that crossed over that we never knew about, that you know, we're about to find out. So it's gonna be really, really...
God, if Eric Foreman's Venom comes to MCU, I quit everything.
Leading into the hype for this, and a lot of the theories, I don't think that we're going to see... I've heard a lot of people think that there's going to be a recast version of Tony Stark. I've heard rumors about, like, Tom Cruise doing a version of Iron Man, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a different universe. Because originally, before they hired RDJ to do Tony Stark, they were actually debating Tom Cruise. Yeah. To be Tony Stark before Robert Downey.
I mean, Tom Cruise is a great actor. I could see him doing a version of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Would it be as good as the RDJ?
No, that man was built for that role. Some roles build the actor. Some actors build a role. Yeah. I think he created and made Tony Stark his own, and I don't think anyone would be able to do it as well as he is.
I agree.
My theory, and it's something I want to pick your brain about. So, when the MCU first started, right? So they started making all these movies, starting with Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and all that, and they kept throwing snippets of Thanos in there. And so when finally Infinity War came around, every Marvel fan, movie person was so hyped because
ready for Thanos.
Ready for Thanos, and it was that phase was the climax of everything. But Infinity War was not the climax that we thought it was going to be. It was just the...
Well, it was the climax for Thanos. Thanos.
It basically connected everything. And that's why Endgame was the finale.
The
Endgame. Yes, it was the Endgame. And it basically, every 10 years that Marvel was building, Infinity War brought everything together, and Endgame finished it hard. I think Multiverse of Madness is going to be the Infinity War of Phase 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're looking at all these TV shows. We haven't even gone over the other TV shows that have been coming around and the other movies. And I think all these things are going to connect and they're going to come together in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. And then something else is going to be presented to us. And I think that is going to be the finale. Now, what that is going to be, I have no idea. But I think this is going to be the Infinity War of Phase 1.
I mean, I'm just so hyped because there's so many different things that could be thrown in there. We could get the introduction of the mutants. We could get the introduction of the Fantastic Four. Kang the Conqueror is supposed to be a descendant of Reed Richards. He's Nathaniel Richards, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So he's supposed to be a descendant of Reed Richards. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So jumping forward, like I mentioned, there's so many things that are connecting. The last few things that we talked about, WandaVision, Loki, What If, and Spider-Man, I think are going to be the bulk of what Doctor Strange is going to be. However, MCU obviously has put out so much content, including Black Widow prequel movie, which even though I thought was going to be completely hot garbage, turned out to be relatively entertaining. I thought it was a very entertaining movie. I don't think it was a phenomenal, but I think it was entertaining. I would watch it.
I enjoyed Black Widow. I think the momentum of it, like taking a little bit of the movie business side of it, like I think it would have done commercially better had it come out in the middle of Phase 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somewhere in between Iron Man 3
mm-hmm.
and
right before Endgame.
Yeah, right before Endgame. But again, that's not how it ended up working out. But I mean, as a film in general, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love Natasha Romanoff's character, and I thought they did her pretty well.
I love her younger sister, Yelena.
Yes.
I think the actress is, one, very attractive. Two, she did such an amazing job. Her cameo appearance, well, not cameo, actually, her appearance in Hawkeye series was hilarious, and she did a really good job. So
her character is interesting because, typically Black Widow is a very serious character, and she's always just, like, calling out the bullshit, just instantly. And she's just like in the Black Widow movie, she's just like, why are you always doing that thing where you pose?
The superhero thing.
The pose when you land. He's like, do you even land like that's not practical?
Yeah, it was so funny. Her character was amazing. I genuinely love that.
Her love of mac and cheese too.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Kraft mac and cheese.
You were listening. So Black Widow came out giving a backstory of Black Widow. Obviously, she's not, hopefully, going to be in future because she is dead in the MCU. Moving on to the very controversial movie that is The Eternals. I say controversial because though as a movie it was phenomenal, these beings basically have been on Earth for centuries, including all the Thanos stuff, and they just stood by.
I don't know. So it's gonna be interesting with the new phase of Marvel movies to see how they interconnect all of the cosmic and the interdimensional stuff along to go with the gods. So like I think Eternals is going to segue more into things like Thor. In Thor they're gonna start diving into Gore the God Butcher, and Eternals are kind of like gods. So they're
space aliens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but they're gonna be. It's gonna be interesting to see how they weave the whole story together. Like the whole point of the whole thing that made the MCU was the fact that they took what could independently be seen as a collection of independent films, each with their own story, each with their own narratives, but they each had these threads that connected all of them and told a greater overarching story.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what this new phase shows because, like I said, I have no idea how Eternals is gonna connect.
Yeah, I have no idea how
Multiverse of
anything is
Madness.
going to connect. Now they did have the Celestials in the Eternals, who are basically space gods, and in the Eternals, to spoil the movie, basically the Eternals have these beings come to a planet, build their society up, help them as gods, and then once their population reaches a certain intelligence or amount,
they use the planets as incubators, right?
Yeah.
To create more Eternals. So they basically plant a seed for an Eternal. Yes, for a Celestial. So they plant a seed for a Celestial, and the Eternals are basically their like middle management.
Yeah. They're the assistant to the general manager. Yeah. So and then once the population of the planet has reached X threshold, the planet gets destroyed, and inside the planet, the Celestial comes out.
I thought it was interesting that Thanos actually stopped the Celestial from emerging from Earth, because it was gonna emerge. Yeah, because of the snap.
Yeah.
Because the Celestial was gonna emerge within a short time frame before the snap happened, and then by him doing the snap, it basically delayed the Celestial.
Yep. Yeah, which I thought was very clever. However, interesting was in the post-credits scene of Eternals. 3. 1, Harry Styles comes out saying he's Thanos' brother. 2, when the Celestial comes, he's like, well, you chose to save this planet rather than have the Celestial emerge. I will take you back to our planet. He goes to the Eternals. He's like, I will judge you, and then depending on your answer, we will see if we're going to destroy the Earth or not. Could they be the next villains? We don't know.
Yeah.
The third important thing is Kit Harington comes out as the Black Knight.
Yeah.
And in the background, you hear
Blade's voice. Yeah.
Blade, who is going to be played by one of my favorite actors, Mahershala Ali. So I want to see how they incorporate all of that into the next phase.
It's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Next movie that came out, September 3rd, 2021, Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
I think that's diving a little bit more into the mystical side of things, the dragon, and a little bit of the interdimensional thing, because they had that pocket dimension where they had the eternal dragon and the Shang-Chi People's Village and all that stuff. As a standalone movie, I really enjoyed it. I thought I really liked the first half of that movie because the martial arts choreography was really, really great.
Phenomenal. I totally agree.
I was a little disappointed by the end because of how heavy they relied on CG for the final battle.
I agree. I mean, it's really hard to find a dragon these days to film in real life, but I get what you mean.
Nobody called Nessie, man. Like, you could have found a Loch Ness monster or something.
I mean,
all you need is 350.
They could have called Daenerys.
350.
Daenerys could have sent him some dragons. So Shang-Chi, I actually don't think Shang-Chi is going to make an appearance in Doctor Strange. He might make a cameo, but I don't think he's going to be a major player. Whatever the next big MCU thing is going to be, I think he's going to be in that, but I don't think he's going to be as major in
I mean, the rumors for all of the different appearances are kind of out of this world. They're
saying it's going to be bigger than Endgame.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean, it's gonna be really, really cool to see, but kind of trying to get to a wrap up point. I am really excited for Multiverse of Madness. I think, as the title indicates, it's going to be madness. I don't know what to expect. I'm not sure if it's gonna be able to live up to the hype, but Marvel hasn't disappointed us yet.
Yeah, true. Last 2 points I'm going to talk about real quick. Falcon and Winter Boy, and then Hawkeye. Both these shows I was very reluctant on watching. I actually just finished them, both of them last week. I did not think either show was going to do well. I was pleased with both of them. I thought they actually pulled it off really well. Do I think they're phenomenal? No. They're very entertaining. Hawkeye, how they progressed the show, how they showed his character, how they showed the he was his hero. Now he's like, I just want to live my life type thing. The way they portrayed that, I think, was great. One quarrel I had was the last episode, the last fight. They killed everybody. Mm-hmm. You could see them shooting their arrows, and you're like, oh, okay, they're hurting them. No, they're killing them.
Yeah,
they're murdering them.
Yeah,
which I found kind of weird. But overall,
well, I mean, Kingpin got shot in the face too.
Yeah. Oh my God, he got trucked by a car. I was like, yeah, but then But overall, good show. It came out Christmas, close to Christmas. And
I'm so glad they allowed Vincent D'Onofrio to pick back up his role as Kingpin too.
Yeah. Oh man, he did a phenomenal job. He did a phenomenal job in the Daredevil series on Netflix. But I thought it was a good show. Same thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier. I did not think this was going to be a good show. I was very reluctant to watch. I actually just finished it. But it did turn out to be very entertaining. It showed two compelling arcs. One, the dynamic between Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then people having to deal with the blip. People coming back, the terrorist group that are like, well, what about the people that are coming back or that stayed here?
They briefly touched on that too in WandaVision.
Yeah.
Monica Rambeau. They briefly touched on that on WandaVision with Monica Rambeau's flashback to when she got blipped back to the hospital. She was looking for her mom, and then everybody's getting blipped back. Yeah. And then they briefly touched on that too in Hawkeye with Yelena Belova.
Yeah. So yeah. So Yelena makes a comeback in that series at the very end.
They showed her when she got blipped back and all that.
Yeah, which I didn't know she got snapped. But
which makes sense. It kind of explains as to why she wasn't
she wasn't there. Yeah. But she was trying to kill Clint for what happened to Natasha, and he explained that she sacrificed herself for the greater good, which I think tied that story really well. Falcon and Winter Soldier, like I said, was the second part was they're trying to pick a new Captain America. They decided on John Walker, who turned out to be U.S. agent, basically a deranged version. He wants to do the right thing, but he has the way he does it is bad. He wants to help America, but he's like a extreme Punisher.
So look, I have a different perspective on this. It probably has to do with the fact that I'm a veteran myself. Mm-hmm. It probably has to do with the fact that I know a lot of guys that did some of the harder work in the military. And the thing about John Walker's character is that he is exactly what the U.S. government trained him to be.
Yeah, which he mentions at the end.
And so, one of the things that they mentioned about the super soldier serum is that it makes you more of who you truly are. Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, Steve Rogers was a one-of-a-kind, person. He was, very altruistic, and he was, had very rigid ideology, and whereas John Walker, he wanted to be the Captain America that everybody thought, but he was expecting it to just be easy, and it wasn't. And then he still was dealing with a lot of the things that a lot of veterans deal with in the long run, which is coping with what life after the service truly means. And so I think it was interesting the way that it was handled. I thought that it could have been very easy for them to turn John Walker into this mustache twirling version of Captain America, where he's just evil for the sake of being evil, making all the wrong choices. But you could see that he wanted to do the right thing. Yeah, he had good intentions.
Yeah,
he had good intentions, but at the end of the day, he had that anger that he didn't know how to overcome. And like in the moment, the critical moment where he was deemed unworthy to be Captain America was when he killed the one soldier. But at the same time, they had just killed his best friend.
Yeah,
like the emotion that's going into that.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I totally understand. And from I understand what the veterans go. Well, I can only fathom. But I think the way they explained that was very humanistic.
Yes.
Rather than a comic book MCU type thing. Even the issues that they explained later with Falcon, they kept poking and prodding and he's a black Captain America or he's Black Falcon, and
Falcon.
And I thought it was funny, but it was they did touch on some real world issues, and I thought it was very clever that they did that. I genuinely enjoyed that show that I did not think that I was going to.
Yeah, and like I said, they could have very easily given us a half A approach with. They could have done Captain America 4 with Sam Wilson, done an origin story, and it would have been terrible. Yeah. Honestly, it would have been terrible. But the fact that they gave it these 6 episodes, these 6 1-hour episodes, to really dive into a story and show you why he's choosing to become the new Captain America, it made the transition so much better. And I am actually genuinely hyped for a Captain America movie starring Sam Wilson, Captain America.
If they make it.
They're going to make it.
Maybe. Well, we'll see, I guess.
Don't be a hater right here.
Yeah.
Cap.
Any final thoughts on
It's my captain.
Anything else?
Hype for the madness, man. Hype for the madness.
Madness. Yep. Well, thank you guys for watching. This was our lead up to Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, which drops this week on Friday. We will do a review of that later down the road.
Yeah. Hi everybody, thanks for watching our content. As we gear up to continue having our channel grow, we're nearing our 100th subscriber. We're doing a giveaway for this great Stan Lee collectible. We're very excited about this. If you want to be eligible to win this bad boy, need you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment under the video. That way we can choose the winner as soon as we get to that 100th subscriber. We're very excited for the upcoming content. We've got lots of movies that are coming out that we're going to review. We're very, very excited. Thanks, guys, for watching. Bye.
If you like our videos, please subscribe and hit the like button.